Welcome to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host tonight, Matt. I'm joined, as always, by Contown. Contown, how are you?
Doing good. Packing my bags here, getting ready for a little road trip down to Bloomington, Indiana. Wallet's a little fatter because of the Maryland Terrapins covering for me this weekend. Um, and feeling good. Full swing, mid-season form here.
So I didn't ask that when we were talking about it before the show, but are you leaving Friday night? That's a long trip from Ann Arbor.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
after the varsity game, you're leaving.
Yep. We're gonna get down there, and it's gonna be a business trip, but we get the noon kick and get the W.
Nice. Yeah. That's one of them that I want to get to. I feel like it's all in now that Northwestern has released those plans. Northwestern is definitely on the list now, but I really want to get to Bloomington because it's relatively close and it seems like one of the more affordable trips of all the Big Ten schools. So
yeah, we're doing what we think is a veteran move. It's my first time, but staying in Indy, so they'll cut an hour off the trip down, and hopefully avoid some of the traffic on getting out. I've heard getting out of Bloomington is tough, so I'm not trying to stay on campus into Sunday.
Right. Yeah, it's not a very big place. Once you get south of Indy, there's just not a whole lot. And Bloomington's like one of the bigger towns actually, but once you get to the freeway, I'm sure it's not that bad, but moving around there could be a little bit difficult, I'm sure. I mean, Ann Arbor's not exactly the best. They do a great job on game day considering how many people are there, but it's quite a bit different than they're college towns. It's just different than NFL game where you sit in traffic for 20 minutes and you're back on the freeway. It's like because you're in a gigantic city. So tonight we're going to talk about the Iowa matchup from last weekend and preview Indiana for a little bit at the end. Let's start with Iowa. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Pretty good game overall, especially when you consider the context of Iowa's defense. Corum had a pretty big day, gained a little bit less on the yards per carry than we've seen in recent weeks. But let's start first with the run game there. What were your thoughts on Michigan's rushing attack against pretty stout Iowa defense? Number one, I think they were going into the week according to S&P Plus, but I'm not sure what they were coming out of.
Yeah, well, it was like you said, the number one defense. Iowa's always got a good defense. Always got a stout front seven against the run, and usually some really good secondary players. That's Phil Parker's wheelhouse there. But Michigan had a really good day, especially on the ground. I want to say I read it was the third most rushing yards Iowa has given up in. I'm not sure the time frame, last 5 or 10 years. It's one of the other ones was actually the Big Ten championship game last year, but Michigan had a level of success against this Iowa defense that very few other teams have achieved in the last 5 to 10 years here, especially at Kinnick. So you get that first drive that I'm sure was scripted, but it couldn't have gone any better. It really came out, paved them. They're running for well over 5 yards per carry on that first drive. Took a couple smart shots, didn't connect on the one kind of fake bubble with Ronnie Bell on the wheel. But I thought JJ kind of threw that in a safe spot. And then you get a really nice scheme on the fake counter reverse to Ronnie Bell to cap off that drive. So kind of a paving. I think the offense turtled a little bit in a smart way. I think that's once you get a 20-point lead on one of the nation's worst offenses, you kind of should do that. But I think when they wanted to, they were mostly paving this really good Iowa defense.
Yeah, and I typically, I mean, I certainly agree that you go into more conservative mode, especially when you get into the third quarter and you're up 20-0. I think they went a little too conservative, but I think that's kind of, a little bit of a nitpicking thing, and it's kind of a hindsight. Well, it seems too conservative because it didn't work. I didn't get that far into the rewatch. I didn't have enough time to get into the second half, really. But without looking at the detail of the run schemes in the second half, I felt like they got a little bit too. They weren't as creative. It seemed like kind of their base play, which is fine. I mean, duo was working earlier, but probably a little too conservative for my liking. But at that point, you're up 20-0, and is Iowa's offense capable of scoring 20? No, they're not. So, I understand the thought process there, and I think Corum. I mentioned the yards per carry. I think he would have been over 5 had it not been for the kind of late game conservative attack. Yeah. Just he got kind of stuffed at the line on numerous carries in the fourth quarter for sure.
Right. There was certainly some isolated play calls that, again, it could be a hindsight thing, but some isolated play calls I didn't love. I'm not sure if it was 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. When Michigan is trying to fourth quarter, I can't remember if Iowa had scored yet or not, but I think they had scored, and you know what it was? It was before, or sorry, after we got the 4th down stop. Did not like the 3rd down play call there. I didn't like the speed option to the boundary in the first half. It just is. I'm sure they've practiced it, but it's something we haven't seen JJ run in a game, much less against a great defense like Iowa's. So I definitely agree. There were some key spots where the play calls were a little questionable.
And that speed option to the boundary, that is what do I want to say, like a trend or like a theme type play. And I specifically have not seen it run with all that much success. I'm sure it's out there because not just Michigan, other teams keep trying it.
Yeah.
But to me, I haven't seen it be all that successful. So, yeah, I kind of agree with that call as well. I thought too, and I'd have to look at it a little closer, the fumble play where Edwards covered it up. Was that just a protection bust, or because that guy was running completely free, and sometimes they will let that guy run for one guy on the edge run free, but that guy seemed way tighter to JJ, and that basically makes that play impossible.
Right. When I watched it live, I thought it was just a kind of a schematic win. I know MGO blog likes to call those like RPS, rock paper scissors wins, right? Like just the protection. Like Michigan had different teams call it different things, but like a pinch protection where you had a linebacker blitzing in the B gap, and Iowa just had one too many guys coming on the play, and the protection that Michigan had called dictated that defensive end was going to be unblocked rather than the linebacker.
So they just got us with a good call.
I think that's what it is. I haven't heard like Al Borges or someone say otherwise, but that was my first take on that.
Yeah, I
And you
thought.
hope like a guy like JJ, maybe you can put a move on him. I think JJ thought he could get the ball out, and clearly he just got hit before the arm started going forward there.
Yeah, and that's just similar to forcing it in a tight window, or not making the right read based on the coverage, like that type of stuff. Learning how to either eat that or escape it, whatever. That stuff will come with more time on task for him. At this level, I'm sure he's seen an unblocked guy before. Um, and IMG, they're playing top competition, but it's a little bit easier to
Right.
get around that guy in high school than it is an Iowa defensive player.
Right. On the speed option, I almost think they were like, hopefully you convert on third down there, but if they got anything, I think they would have gone for it on fourth. That almost seems like a play. Like, third and four isn't really a distance where you play to set up a better fourth down, but that's such a play run into such little real estate that it feels like you're almost like, okay, if we convert, it's a big win. But if we get three on third and four, we'll take it as a win and we're going to go for it. Yeah,
And
it's
especially
just,
with how a lot of colleges run it, it's
yeah,
more of a, obviously a speed option is always a pitch, but it's more of a guaranteed pitch. Like
yes,
it's not necessarily as much of a read. It's we're trying to pull that defensive end a little bit and get it out on the corner and into the boundary. That isn't giving you a huge advantage. But
yeah,
like I said, more teams than just Michigan have ran that. So there must be something more to that. But what were your thoughts about JJ in the pass game, other than you mentioned the one where you kind of put it in the safe spot on the wheel?
yeah. I think there's a handful of throws, like three or four maybe, that I didn't like, but on the whole, going up against a really good secondary, JJ I thought had a really good game. Um, and mainly in that he didn't try to force anything. He made smart decisions. He found his second and third reads. He found his check downs. He broke the pocket just a couple times and did so efficiently and moving forward. You can clearly see that he took it upon himself to improve on how he breaks the pocket from Maryland to this week. The one time that stands out, obviously, is the touchdown to Donovan Edwards. But yeah, I think the coaches had a great game plan that allowed JJ to take what the Iowa defense gave him, and I think the entire day he was making the intelligent decision with the football, which was key. I mean, the only way Iowa was going to win this game was if JJ made a mistake, and I think a lot of the day, you saw Iowa not play. They don't drop eight like Maryland was doing at times against us, but they would line up with more or less a three safety look. One of the corners would be playing almost at safety depth, or they would play. They'd be in quarters, and your two corners are playing at 9, 10 yards off, 11 yards off, right? So they were almost trying to prevent the deep shot, which, I mean, that is Iowa's thing, but also they were trying to showed JJ smaller underneath windows and tell JJ to matriculate the offense down the field in 8, 9, 10 play drives, and JJ was able to do that. He made great decisions with the football all day. You missed the deep shot to Roman, and I really thought you might have another in mind, but I thought the most ill-advised throw on the day was driving into the end zone at the end of the first half. He tried to fit a ball into Schoonmaker that was double-ish coverage. There was really like three Iowa defenders in the area, but at least one defender was very tight on Schoonmaker, and that ball just felt right for a tip and a interception. Given the given the timing in the half, there's probably not a lot of damage to be done about an interception there, but you would lose the 3 points that we ended up with. So only a couple throws stand out as like ill-advised throws or throws that you wish you had back. And against this Iowa secondary, that's a really good day.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the only way Iowa's gonna beat you. That you're gonna beat this Michigan team, and that was a big concern going into the game. And I thought he passed the test. I mean, and again with that breaking the pocket stuff, the stuff that makes him so dangerous, but also dangerous to defend, but also can be dangerous to the offense. That stuff will continue to grow to where it's more a little bit more structured. Some of his talent is based off of it being unstructured, but learning to break the pocket in productive manner, learning to take the check downs, like those type of things will be an ongoing thing with him. And similar to some of the stuff we'll get to with the defense here, but with him and the passing game in general, you just want it to continue to grow each game. And I think, despite the numbers being down, I think he did show growth. So I think that is definitely a key moving forward. Get the passing game into a rhythm, and utilize the weapons that they have a little bit better. We're still going to be run heavy team, I think, but having it be as efficient as possible while being more explosive is the goal from going from Cade to JJ, right? You still want to have the good parts of what Cade did and also have the ability to do more. And that is the advantage that he gives you, the quarterback.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's switch over to the defense now. I thought the defense had a pretty good game, especially in the first half. I mean, Iowa could get nothing going in the first half of the game. The end of the game, especially that late drive, a lot of the yardage came off of that. What were your thoughts on the overall defensive game? And then we'll get into the specifics of the run pass defense here after that.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good overall game from the defense against an offense that you should have a pretty good game against. I think, like you said, there was some holes at the end. A bit of it was, not success that you want to give up, but Michigan playing to keep things in front of them and make Iowa use clock, make Iowa string many successful plays together, just do things that this offense is not geared to do. And some of that is essentially garbage time as well. Like, if you are a computer model, this game was 27-7, or maybe even 20-7 in your mind. That last Iowa touchdown drive is pretty much entirely garbage time. So pretty good overall day, especially against the run. The only chunk plays Iowa got in this game required holding or some kind of penalty generally. The clipping call against Mason Graham is kind of 50-50, depends on what angle you think the Iowa offensive lineman hit Graham from. But mostly a dominant day overall on the ground, I would say. And the big thing that stood out to me, and we can dive into this a little bit deeper, but the big thing that stood out to me is Michigan's linebackers. And I think Michigan's linebackers in coverage, to be specific. And I think while Iowa is not an overall team that's equipped to take advantage of that, I think Michigan has some work to do at the linebacker level to be better suited to take on the better offenses coming down the road.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big concerns, I think, for me moving forward Obviously going into the year it was pass rush, and I think, after the first game, it was kind of okay, well, maybe the pass rush isn't a concern at all. And then that kind of stalled out a little bit and came back to life late in the game against Iowa. And I think, like, moving forward, that the rushing with four, I think the group is kind of being established, um, in the specific rotations and the guys that they're going to use, where that will continue to get better. What worries me is the linebackers in coverage. Generally speaking, these two linebackers that are playing inside should be, Colson's a freak athlete and Barrett is safety linebacker. He hasn't always been inside linebacker in a 3-4. So you would think, like, athletically, that should be a pretty good strength, but it looked to be a pretty big weakness, especially in the zone dropping stuff.
Yeah.
So that will have to continue to improve. And the thing that worries me is, whenever Nakai Hill-Green is reinserted to the lineup, he's probably coming in for Barrett. And, when that happens, it's not like Nakai is known for great pass coverage either. So that could be something to watch moving forward, I think. I think the defensive backs covered pretty well. Had the one Sanger still kind of brain fart on. I think that was 3rd and long.
Yeah, 3rd and 22 before the touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, I thought the coverage was pretty good all around, outside of the linebacker zone dropping. What were your thoughts on the pass rush? You kind of share my opinion that it's going to continue to improve. I mean, obviously, Yabi with more time is going to get better, but overall, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it'll continue to improve. It's a mix of guys getting experience and the coaches figuring out which guys need to be on the field when. I would also say Iowa doesn't do a lot of, like, 11 personnel, or and throwing the ball around, or like 7-step drop, or big play action passing game. It's they run a lot of boot. They run a lot of simple passing concepts. They're not a team that wants to sit in the pocket and have long developing routes and throw the ball a lot. So not every moment in this game was set up for Michigan to exhibit great pass rush. And there were flashes of good pass rush. And so I think, I'm kind of okay where Michigan was in this game in terms of the pass rush, once Michigan was in a spot where Iowa needed to push the ball down the field to try to make a comeback. You saw that Michigan was able to get home with 4, with Yabi rushing from a wide stance, Mike Morris rushing both from an edge spot and from an interior spot. So I think the pieces are there to eventually be a good pass rushing team in the second half of the schedule here. And I thought there were flashes from the interior as well. Obviously, you have the Mason Graham sack. Mazzy Smith had some really good pass rushing moments as well. So you might start to see the makings of a good pass rushing front. Especially once we play teams that are more pass heavy and you see more nickel sets, you can see a lot of Mike Morris, Mazzy Smith, Mason Graham, Yabi Oki on the field together. That should have more pass rushing success.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll do a lot more of that in this latter part of the season, and even kind of the NASCAR or whatever you want to call it package. I think will wind up being Morris from the inside, Yabi from the outside, and then either Moore or McGregor from the outside, with obviously Smith staying in the game. He's been the one constant really there. So any other thoughts on Michigan, Iowa before we move on to the Indiana preview?
Just on the, not to harp on it, but on the linebackers, I think the issue with Colson is he's still a young player. And like you said, when Nakai comes back, he's probably going to take Barrett's spot or take snaps from Barrett. So Colson's going to be on the field, and he is the larger liability in pass coverage right now. The issue that I saw, or the deeper philosophical concern that I have, is that he got beat in both his zone drops, or he Iowa beat us due to Colson's zone drops, and he got beat in man coverage. And to me, that just says he doesn't. It says to me that he doesn't trust himself. He doesn't trust his technique and what he needs to be doing in coverage. It's like in the seam route where, of course, Laporta turns into Peyton Manning and he drops a dime on, I don't know if it was Lachey, but Colson actually had great position there, but he doesn't get his head around to make a play on the ball. He's grabbing and playing catch up. Well, he had great position. He didn't need to grab. He could turn his head around and trust his technique and make a play on the ball. And then you mentioned as well the zone drops. He was almost never deep enough in his zone drop or in the right spot to make a play. So it is a bit concerning. He's still a young guy, but I just see a guy that doesn't really trust himself in coverage right now.
Yeah, the man stuff, I typically don't get too worked up about it. I know that's kind of a big talking point a lot of times, the Georgia game last year or Saquon Barkley from years ago against Penn State. The man stuff, not many. I mean, there are some, but not many inside linebackers are going to be good at man coverage. It's just not what they're built to do. It's not what they do on a consistent basis. And a lot of times that is more schematic. Keeping guys out of bad positions. So that doesn't worry me. What worries me more is the zone stuff. And it seems to be more of an awareness thing than an ability thing. And that is part of being a young player. So, he's got to grow up fast. But we're going on kind of into year 2. He wasn't a full-time starter last year, but I think that will get better with more reps. And then the man stuff, can it be better? Yes. Do I ever expect, any of Michigan's linebackers now or in the future to cover a Donovan Edwards type or an excellent receiving tight end and man consistently? No. That's just one of those things that, to me at least, is always going to be difficult. And Michigan offensively is trying to do the same thing, right? I mean, we're trying to get Donovan on, one-on-one with a linebacker. So that's kind of more one of, at least in my opinion, one of the things that's like, yeah, the inside linebackers aren't great at man coverage. Well, when you find one that is, let me know. Because I've been looking for a while.
Yeah, no, I only bring up the man to illustrate that he actually had good position in this game and wasn't getting his head around, which is more, I think, a confidence or an awareness thing, like you said, than it is like a man technique issue. Junior Colson is, as far as inside linebackers go, athletically, he's one of the ones that's more equipped to be good at man coverage, and hopefully you don't put him in positions where he needs to be. But I think he was in good position a lot of the times when he was asked to man up on someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I think he'll continue to get better. That certainly seems like one of the big weaknesses right now. So shoring some of that up should definitely help moving forward.
Oh, and real quick, I think Makari Page is Michigan's best safety.
Oh, you saw that. Okay. I'm still going with Rod Moore. But yeah, to me, just kind of, it goes back to my preseason, I wouldn't say gripe, but preseason thought on like Andrell Anthony. To me, like when a third guy in the safety's case like emerges, everyone thinks or says, you know, oh, maybe this guy's better than the starter, and maybe better than the starters, and maybe Makari is better than one of the starters. But to me, it's just kind of like, oh, awesome, we've got a third safety that can play. That's a huge luxury to me, and he's getting a lot of snaps. So maybe they see, maybe the coaches agree with your thought that maybe he's emerging as one of the top two for sure.
I would say right now I don't necessarily think comparing him and Rod Moore. I think those are the top two for sure. I think to me that's more about Makari's playing well, and I think RJ Moten is having an up and down start to this year. To be clear, they're asking Makari Page and RJ Moten to do different things, so it's not a one-to-one comparison. But yeah, Makari Page is playing well right now.
Yeah, and I think his emergence allows them to do more with Moten.
Yes.
So I think that will be a benefit down the line to where you can play Moten as, say this linebacker issue continues to be a thing. Well, maybe in true passing situations, maybe Moten and say Colson or Barrett, whatever, play linebacker, and you play two safeties and two corners and Samer still, kind of a dime look, like a three safety, two corners and a nickel with only Colson, So I think Makari's emergence is just, like I said, a luxury. I mean, allows you to do a lot of different things, and he's played very well. So
yep.
Safety play, defensive back play in general has been a definite, I don't want to say surprise, but a definite bright spot for the defense this year so far. Let's jump over to Indiana. 22-point spread this weekend in Bloomington. Outside of the COVID year, Michigan is like 19 and, well, if you count the COVID year, Michigan's like 19-1 in the last 20 matchups against Indiana. What are your thoughts on the Hoosiers? Let's start on their offense. Let's start on that side of the ball first.
Yeah, so this is an offense that is it's a few things. It's one, it's an offense that wants to go very fast and throw the ball a lot. They are one of the faster paced teams in the country. I think they are actually, to be specific, they're second nationally in plays per game, 87.8. So, you're going to get close to 90 plays from an Indiana offense if Indiana has their way. And they're actually first nationally in pass attempts per game at 54.3. So this is a team that wants to run as many plays as possible, and the vast majority of those plays are going to be pass plays. They want to screen, and get the ball out quick to the edges to their athletes. And this is not an offense that has found much efficiency throughout the year. In all the per play metrics, pretty much across the board, Indiana is in the bottom 30 teams nationally, as in they rank in the hundreds nationally, and in pretty much all the offensive efficiency metrics. So it's an offense that wants to go fast, but they don't really end up going anywhere with that speed. So it should be a different challenge for Michigan in terms of style, but in terms of efficacy, I think we can all sleep soundly about Michigan handling this Indiana offense.
Absolutely. And in years past, that's tempo against them has been one of the biggest, struggle points for Michigan facing Indiana specifically. And they're even faster this year, basically than they've been since Kevin Wilson was still the coach there. So that's always been an issue with their offense. I was looking at some of their rushing production, rushing output, and they have, I believe it was 525 yards rushing on the year. That's sacks included. And Bazelak has like negative 70. So they have approximately 600 yards of rushing in 5 games. And if you think about just like Blake Corum against Maryland, he had nearly half that production against Maryland by himself. Their rushing attack is not very good. And it's not very efficient either. Just over 4 yards per carry for the Auburn transfer for them. So I find it hard to believe that outside of what's commonly referred to as college crap, I just have a hard time seeing them move the ball with any type of consistency against this defense.
Yeah, they're currently sitting at 2.4 yards per carry as a team, which includes sacks. As you mentioned, Bazelak's negative number there. That's good for 126th nationally. And the passing offense also ranks in the hundreds in efficiency. So it's going to be Michigan's defense versus identifying and tackling screens, which Michigan tends to be pretty good at. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing to mention about their offensive line is a huge weak spot. In years past, they would often have one or two guys that, were good to very good on the offensive line. And this year they have a few guys that are downright bad on the offensive line, and the rest isn't all that great to pick up the slack. So there's been quite a bit of mention on the Indiana message boards about the offensive line coach being a big issue for that program. So I don't know if it's a talent identifying thing or a coaching specific thing, but either way, it hasn't been great for the Hoosiers up front.
Yeah, I think the left tackle Haggard is a decent player, and pretty much everyone else is a pylon, and that includes former Michigan center Zach Carpenter. And they've got another transfer up front. We were talking before the show. A lot of this offense is transfers, so it's a really motley crew of a disaster on offense.
Yeah. Yep. Let's flip over to the Indiana defense. One of the things in years past with them is just they're chaotic. They bring pressure. They bring it from everywhere. They don't have, and I'm of course blanking on the guy's name. Their inside linebacker last year was a really good player. He was like a 4-year starter for them.
It's double M name. Micah McFadden.
Yep. They don't have Micah McFadden anymore to kind of clean up the mess behind some of the chaos that they like to create. So what are you expecting when Michigan has the ball? I mean, Indiana has given up looks like over 20 in every game, and 45 to Cincinnati and 35 to Nebraska. So what are your thoughts on the Hoosiers defense?
So you mentioned that they're more multiple. Now they are in, is this year 2 without Kane Womack on the sidelines? So new defensive coordinator from some of the better units, and some of the front players that we've seen have success for them in the past, like Mike McFadden. The other guy that seems like he was there forever was Tigray Scales, or maybe that's just a name I remember. But it was always Mike McFadden and Tigray Scales. But they still have a couple pretty talented corners in Tywan Mullen and Jalen Williams. PFF doesn't. They're not grading out super great on PFF, and actually it's the pass defense that is the sore spot for Indiana, the secondary, the sore spot for this defense this year. Rush defense, they're doing okay in terms of opponent yards per rush attempt. They're actually not bad. They're not top 10 team, but they are top 40. They're currently only allowing 3.4 yards per rush for their opponents. That's good for 34th nationally. But it's the passing defense allowing 8 yards per attempt for opponents that's really caused problems for this defense, and that includes a game against FCS Idaho. So a lot of yards to be had in the air against this team. We'll see if Michigan has Roman Wilson this week, as he didn't finish the game last week. Pretty sure it's a concussion from the should be targeting that they missed against Cooper DeJean. But either way, this is a secondary that Michigan should have a lot of success against. Cincinnati had a lot of success in the air. That's how Nebraska tore them up. Western Kentucky should have won that game. That is a very pass-heavy team. All the solid passing offenses have tore up this Indiana secondary.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Cincinnati game, and Cincinnati, while they are throwing the ball a little bit more this year than they have in previous years under Fickle, I still would consider them a great passing attack, and they just tore up Indiana. 354 and 4 touchdowns for Cincinnati's quarterback, and 270 of those yards were to Trey Tucker's their slot, but Tyler Scott he plays a little slot and outside, but he's a very small receiver too. I think he's under 200 for sure, but yeah, 5'11", 185. So two of the smaller kind of speedsters for Cincinnati really gave Indiana a hard time. And Tyler Scott had 185 yards. So, the pass defense, despite their returning production at corner, has not been very good this year. So, and anything else on Indiana's defense before we move into some picks and game score prediction?
No.
All right. Let's move to some prize picks then. You got those ready?
Yes. All right. First one we have, we'll go for the Michigan quarterback, JJ McCarthy, over under 224 and a half passing yards.
He was under that significantly against Iowa, but this is a much different defense. Outside of game plan, I don't see any way he's under that. So I'll say over.
Yeah, I have to say over. He's actually only gone over that number once against Hawaii.
Yep.
And I guess that feels right. I mean, it is right, but thinking about all these games, but I think just the context is different. This is a Indiana secondary that is just not very good, and I gotta go over on that number. This feels like a game where they need JJ to go over. They need the offense to go over, just in terms of building some momentum as you start to see tougher defenses down the stretch here. I mean, this is an Indiana team giving up 296 yards per game passing. That's 121st nationally. It's got to be over. Okay. Over under for Blake Corum, 107 and a half rushing yards.
I will say over just because I think he breaks a big one. I think he'll have his regular steady stuff, and I think he'll break a big one. So I'll say over, but probably not by much.
I'm kind of with you. I'm tempted to go under because I do think they'll probably work Stokes back in to the game this week. Probably try to even out the carries a bit with, you could certainly see Corum having another 20 carry day against Penn State. Um, so, but I agree. I think he's going to break one. It's also it's not a good run defense, but rush defense is the strength of the Indiana defense. So I'll say over, but barely. Copy you there. And then over under 67.5 receiving yards for Ronnie Bell.
Oh man, with Roman out, I feel like it could be a decent CJ game, but with my thoughts on the Cincinnati slots beating them, I'll say over again.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the over there. JJ, and I don't know if it's JJ or the coaches, but there's a good connection between JJ and Ronnie right now. It feels like so. Unless Ronnie is moved around due to maybe missing Robin Wilson, in terms of which routes he's running, it seems like JJ likes to find Ronnie a lot right now, and um, I'll go over it. I don't know if he's going to have 100, but 67.5 almost feels low right now for Ronnie against defenses not named Iowa. So over. Let's flip over to Indiana here. Let's go to the quarterback, Indiana, Connor Bazelak, the Missouri transfer. Over under 217.5 passing yards for Connor Bazelak.
I'll say under. I just don't think that. I don't think their line is going to hold up enough to give him time. I think he'll definitely get some yard. I think it's going to be really close to that, really. So I'll say under.
I'm going to disagree with you here. Should probably have one where we don't say the same thing, but I think he'll go over. I think even if he only throws for 220 yards, it's over. It seems like a low number. I know Michigan's passing yards per game allowed is one of the better numbers nationally. But Indiana, Iowa did just hit 246 yards. A lot of that was garbage time, but if you're a gambling man, you have to think about garbage time. So I think he'll over. It could be a little bit backdoor cover here, but I think he'll go over slightly.
Yeah, that's certainly a way that I was thinking about him getting to that would be maybe the backdoor.
But that requires surviving a few Mike Morris and Yabioki hits late into the fourth quarter too. So
yep,
who knows? All right, and that's it for our prize picks.
All right. Score prediction. I will let you go first. We also have let's do Ronnie's first. We also have Ronnie's prediction, and Ronnie predicts 45-14 Michigan. So I'll let you go now to follow up Ronnie.
I think Michigan's going to cover. I'm not putting any money on this game, no vested interests, but those big 20-point Big Ten spreads, Indiana is a team that Michigan very often covers against. I think it'll be in the ballpark of 48-21. I think that could even be a garbage time touchdown for Indiana. They have hit 20 in every game. Only the Illinois has held them to Nebraska and Illinois have both held them to 23 and 21. So that's been their lowest offensive output. But they're hitting 20 in every game, even the games that they lose. They'll probably get one, just number of plays they run. They'll probably get one late and get to 20. So Michigan covers, but Indiana will get a little bit of points, even if it's garbage time.
Yeah, I think Michigan covers. I don't think this offense is even as good as their offense last year. Now, our defense probably at the time we played them last year was better than our current defense. But I only see one touchdown and maybe a field goal. So I will say 41-10. I think they cover with ease, and I think it's in hand or Michigan's well in control by halftime.
Yep. Let the record reflect. I was 1 point off the Michigan Iowa score. So we'll see if that continues this week.
Yeah, there's no evidence of that. So anything else on Indiana before we close it up and start getting ready for Bloomington?
No, just get healthy, stay healthy. That is, get out of another Big Ten road game with the W and get ready for 2 big tests. Indiana is. I don't think it's a trap game. I don't really think anyone's billing it as a trap game, but just take care of business and keep everything on the table. Michigan's in a great spot after getting through Kinnick, so keep it rolling.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for another episode. As always, appreciate you listening. For Contown, this is Matt signing off. As always, go Blue.